Thank you, Zan. He's really framing this idea of saying, hey, look, to these churches in what's now modern day Turkey, he's telling them, like, hey, look, hold on, and you guys are a part of something way bigger that's going on. You are a part of the family of God, the people of God, and this salvation that you rest in should shape how you show up in the world. Right? He's kind of just repeating in a number of different ways, saying, hey, look, there's a part that we kind of skipped just for time, but he even says to this extent, everything that happened in the past, all the prophets and all the things coming together, they actually did all of that experience, all that, not so much for themselves, but for you today. Right? He's lifting them up. And we kind of mentioned a little bit of like how, we need to keep renewing our minds. Sometimes we have a theology and an understanding that says, hey, I said a prayer, when I was at some camp when I was 10 years old, and that's all the work I have to do. God does the rest. And it's like, well, what? I need constant refreshing and re-cleansing and reorientation. I mean, even today, the weather is different than it was last week. Yes, last week when everybody came in, they came in like this. Wet and cold and damp. And today, people come in chipper and excited, and they're like, oh, what am I going to do today, right? Even the weather affects how we are. And sometimes we think that we are so like, I am solid in who I am. Like, look, if it rains, you're having a bad day. Maybe you're not as bolstered as you think you are. But we kind of live this way where we have recognized things in our lives and in the world around us that we know are things that will pull us down or change our attitudes from the things that we really are desiring. I used to live in a small town. I still live in a small town, but in this one space we lived in, it had this river that went through the center of town, as many of our small towns in Maine do, and it has a dam from an old mill, right? It's probably explaining a number of towns in the area, but this particular town, we had the center of town was this big river. And I was hanging out with there's actually another church in town. I was hanging out with them. We were having lunch, kind of connecting some different churches, and they had an intern who was from Florida. Anyone from Florida? I'm sorry, you guys are from Florida, but that Florida people are crazy. Yeah, it's like a different level. Right? Different level of crazy. Sorry if some of you are from Florida and you're offended. Like, that's why you're here. You're like, I need a break from all that. I need a break from all that. And anyway, we're gathering together, we're eating, we're at this little restaurant, we're having food, and the kid, he was, I don't know, late teens, early 20s, and he asked me if anybody like rafts the local river that's right there. And it's at springtime when it's high, and I say, no. Because they would die. And he goes, well, I'm from Florida, and we run. I'm like, look at me. You will die. Like, when it's at full tilt, it is like, it's not really a river. It is, and when people don't realize is when they see that full, they don't know, there's like a 20-foot drop that water is pushing through, and it just has these big hydraulics, and it's just like, it's not something you want to mess with. But he was like, I'm from Florida. And I was like, I didn't understand what that meant at the time. Anyway, so fast forward a few months. I was like kind of in the winter. Fast forward a few months. I'm sitting in my office, and our office was located right next to the fire department. And I see the truck go out. And these trucks go in and out of there fairly often. And I don't know if it was a God thing or if I was just bored and I had nothing better to do. But I just feel like I should go follow this truck, right? And so I follow it down. They're down at the local river. I walk down to the side. There's a few volunteer firefighters there, and there's two kids out on this rock stuck out there, and it's that kid from town. I did warn him that if you don't die, the fire department will be very upset with you when they have to go rescue you down there. And if you do die, they may still be upset that they have to go rescue you once they find out that you did this willingly. So I'm down there, and I love our first responders and the folks we have in our communities. They do good work, but these guys had no idea what to do. I've done a bunch of whitewater stuff and canoeing and things, and I'm trying to show the guy how to use a throw rope, and he's like getting mad at me because like he doesn't know how, and I'm like, you can fill it with some water. He's already like Lily tossed it out there. Anyway, so they're kind of getting frustrated with me down there, and I'm trying to help them with this thing, and these kids are out there. So I eventually was like, I'm not helpful here, and these fire department guys are getting mad. I would have just like gone out there and got him. Like it wasn't that rough of a spot. Anyway, went and got the guy's dad, said, hey, your kid is in the middle of the river. He's okay. You need to go down there. So he went down. Anyway, but as I left in that moment, and maybe if you were paying attention to the news at the time, you probably didn't recognize it, but they had to call the game wardens. I think the National Guard got involved. I mean, they had drones. It was a bunch of people that had toys. They were like, oh, wait, we gotta, they had like airboats, and it was like, I'm like, we've done worse out in the bush, like with just a few ropes and canoes. But anyway, it was just so interesting to me that here we are, we live in this small town that has a raging stream in the middle of our town. And within our community, we have like no means of actually rescuing someone from this very typical thing that would probably happen. And it just kind of dawned on me. It's like, we have danger right here, and we have a few ropes. That's our strategy plan. And we'll just call on someone else to come in if it gets really bad. That river, and people have fallen into it many times. I had a young guy that I was working with for a while, and we're talking one day, and he goes, oh yeah, I fell in the river. It was like February. And I was like, you didn't fall in the river in February. Like, you wouldn't make it. And he goes, oh yeah? And he pulls up his pants, and he has this like hole in the side of his leg where he fell in, and a stick had punctured him. I mean, the water's pushing him. And it held him. That's what actually kept him alive. He was sitting there, and they had to pull him. Yeah. But again, it was a badge of honor for him. He was like, hey, check this out. And I'm like, you're not smart, right? Stay away from the river. What's wrong with you people? Florida, go home. But the deeper meaning here is we have this huge problem, this huge safety issue in our town, and no one was really caring about it. And I think that this is a lot like our lives in some ways. There are things in our culture, in our lives, things that we are just more inclined and leaning towards, and we don't set healthy boundaries around those things. We just say, well, if I find myself there, I'll figure it out. Right? And by that time, it's now a coin toss whether this destroys me or I make it out. Right? It's a coin toss between, will someone intervene and step into my space and rescue me, or will I be kind of tossed away in the water, if you will? So as we enter into this next piece of text, I think that having that mindset will kind of help us as we read into this. So we're in 1 Peter chapter 1, so verse 13. It says, therefore, with minds that are alert and fully sober, set your hope on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed at his coming. Right? So he's saying right here, some of you have a different version of Bible maybe with you, or you've been used to a different one. And in this instance, instead of saying with minds that are alert and fully sober, right? That's what's being like be on alert. It has this language of girding up your loins, which we actually sang about this morning, which is a weird thing that many of you are probably like, are we having pork chops today? I don't know. What is this loin thing going on? And what it meant is in that time, right? Most people would wear kind of long, they're not dresses, but long like tunic type things, right? Long garments that go to the floor. And if you were to run and move and be agile in one of those, like you can't move your feet more than this, right? And so there was a way that they could actually kind of tie it up. Right? So maybe some of us have a hoodie sweatshirt and we tie it up to hold it off. They tie up those things. So now you can move, right? If you're going to, it's a kind of like the equivalent, like maybe if there was going to be a fight, in our culture today, maybe someone will take their shirt off because they think they're tough. If you see two guys like circling it up, they start like playing with their dress, right? Like they're getting ready to move around. That's girding it up. It's getting those things in there. And then there's a dynamic of protecting the area, especially the inner thigh, for the arteries that are in there. It doesn't take very long to get poked there and you have issues. So protecting these vulnerable points, but also getting these things out of the way so that you are alert, you can move, you can react, you can respond to the things that are around you. So he's saying, hey, be in this space where you are alert. You are fully aware of the hope that you have in Christ when he's revealed. And this is looking towards this place where Jesus is going to come back and set all things right. Saying, hey, set your gaze upon that. Be in that place. Verse 14, as obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. But just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do. For it is written, be holy because I am holy. And that I in there is referencing to God in the Old Testament telling the people of Israel, be holy as I am holy. Now holiness, I just want to kind of camp right here for a minute, right? So if we have that image of the river, right? Girding up your loins, protecting us, being alert would be like, hey, maybe there should be some kind of safety measure here, some kind of at least like a boat that could handle this, right? Being in that place in our lives, there's so many different trappings that we could be in there. But for many of us, especially if you've been in the church for a while, when you hear holiness, you either get kind of shrink back going like, oh great, here we go. Like, where's this going? I'm going to get beat up today. They're going to tell me how bad I am. Or you get into a place where you're like, well, I have to be excited about this because holiness is something I'm supposed to be excited about. And we're going to get excited about holiness. Both of those are maybe okay or not okay. I'm not sure 100%. But the idea of being holy as God is holy is not necessarily just doing all the right things, right? Oh, sometimes we get in our church culture some of these ideas like, if I just be really good, do the right things, God will then now like me. I'm going to tell you, that actually has nothing to do with how this thing works. God loves you and likes you and is for you regardless of those things, right? That's kind of the hope of the story. If we had to have perfect understanding of God and perfect understanding of ourselves and perfect execution of those things in order for God to use us and be a part of our lives, we all should just give up now. Like really, it's like, why even try? Go and do whatever you want, right? Holiness in this instance, what it means in the Old Testament, it was this thing of being set apart, right? Many of us, if I was to ask you what is a china cabinet, most of you probably know. I asked my kids this last week. I'm like, you know what a china cabinet is? And they're like, is it like a box you put a Chinese person in? I'm like, well, that's kind of messed up. But no, it is not that, right? They have no grid for what a china cabinet would be, right? A china cabinet, right? Or what China would be in this sense, right? But many of us know a china cabinet would be in many houses. And many houses would have this special cabinet with special dishes in it, right? And on special occasions, you would take this special china out, right? Grandma would get it out and set it out. And everyone knows that we better behave now, right? Because the special plates are out. This is a different type of dinner. Right? We are not just having the same old. And then those plates will be, hand washed and put back in the china cabinet for another special occasion. Holiness is a lot like that. Saying, hey, here's some things that are special. They're not just meant to be used in any way you'd like. They are used for these special things. And here, Peter is reminding, hey, you're kind of like that. You're kind of like that. You are special. You are set apart. Yes, the culture's doing all this and doing all these crazy things, but you are for a different purpose. You are to bring wholeness into the world. You are to follow after God and to see the things of God permeate in your life and in the world around you. You're a different person. You're holy. You're set apart as God is set apart. Now, this being set apart, God is He is not of this world, but He is in this world. And sometimes in our faith communities, we can get to a place where being holy means separating ourselves from the culture completely to the point where everything that's not of how we want it is evil, and we can justify separating ourselves and saying, I almost said that word, saying, to hell with the community. That's not what I was going to say before, but I was getting going there for a second. To hell with those around us. They're just bad. That is not what holiness is. That's what pride is. And a lot of times in our churches, we confuse holiness and pride. Holiness is knowing that we are special and we are set apart because God in His great love has redeemed us and made us whole. And we just want to serve Him and be a part of what He is doing. When we are being holy because we think we need to follow the rules, we are going in a path that we are actually distancing ourselves from God because we are trying to hold all things together. But when we understand that being holy is a joy, it's a joy to partner with God, it's a joy to be with God in things in the world, we see, one, that holiness is easier to do. We see that it's in that place, and we could see that maybe holiness might look a little different from one person to another as God is working with them in different ways. Maybe the person that you think is far from God is actually come a long ways because your nose is not stoved in, right? Maybe they've come a long ways. They are controlling themselves and they are becoming holy in this process. So we kind of let things slide in that place. But he's reminding them, be holy as God is holy. See yourself as set apart. Be alert of what is going on around you. Continue in the text here. He says, since you call on a Father who judges each person's work impartially, meaning each of us are kind of on our own in this space where God is looking at your individual heart, your individual work. Live out your time as foreigners here in reverent fear. For you know that it was not with perishable things such as silver or gold that you were redeemed from the empty way of life handed down from your ancestors, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect. He has chosen before the creation of the world, but was revealed in this last time for our sake. Right? So he's saying, hey, look, God is moving in this world. He's looking around. This is the theme of 1 Peter. Be a stranger to the world in some ways. Right? There's things that we don't have to keep up with what's going on. Sometimes people go, have you seen what happened in so-and-so? And, when Will Smith slapped the guy, it took me 3 months to be like, so why, I don't really care. What? This is not that important to me. But it fills the news cycle. It fills the feeding of things that are going on in the world. It's okay to just be a little unknowing of everything that's going on. And we live in a day and age that is like treason against our culture, right? No, the world wants you to be up to date on every single thing that's going on. What's going on in the celebrity world, what's going on in the political world, what's going on in the global scene. And you have to stay informed because you may be the reason it all comes together. My grandfather used to watch baseball. He's passed away now. He used to watch baseball a lot. And he liked the Red Sox. And I'd always go upstairs in his little room, and he would be asleep watching the game. It's like the fourth inning, and hey, Gramps, how's the game going? He was like, well, they were tied when they started. That's what he'd always say. It was tied when it started, kind of a thing. And then he'd be watching the game, and something would happen, and he would pick up his phone and say, I'm going to call him. I'm going to call the bullpen and say, you gotta take him out. You gotta fix this, right? And it was a joke, right? It was as if, as a little kid, I was like, wow, my grandfather can call up the Red Sox and tell them that first baseman's got to play a little better. They got to bat a little better, and that was always his answer. So they just hit the ball a little better. Well, of course, right? Right? But we have kind of taken on that in this world, that our critique, our insight, our wisdom, if they would just listen to me, they'd get it all figured out. Okay, you'd probably just muddy the waters just a little bit more. And the chance that your input is all that original is pretty slim to none. But we won't go there today. But being separate from this space, understanding that the worth that we have is found in God, who loves us, who cares for us, who redeemed us. It's not found in the things of the world. Verse 21, through him you believed in God, who raised him from the dead and glorified him. And so your faith and hope are in God. Now that you have purified yourself by obeying the truth, so that you have since love for each other, love for one another deeply from the heart. Right? I love how the scriptures always do this. They'll talk about, hey, you gotta get yourself right before God, you gotta hold yourself right before God, and then they define getting right before God as having love for others. Right? Sometimes we like to go, well, no, I'm good. I don't watch movies. I don't listen to that music, devil stuff. Right? I'm holy. And maybe for you, that's where God has called you, and that's fine. But if it doesn't express itself in love to others, it's not the holiness that God is looking for. It's something else. And it may be good for you, may help, but look, if it doesn't demonstrate in love, in real love that people would say, that person is loving. Right? Sometimes we have an idea of love as being like a wrecking ball. You're like, well, this is what people need to hear. This is what people need. No, right? Annoying people are not usually loving. You can have opinions, you can have ideas of how the world works, you can have convictions and have them and hold them close, but make sure that you are loving. You are deeply loving from the heart. Verse 23, for you have been born again, not of perishable seed, but of imperishable, through the living and enduring word of God. He has this little verse here. For all people are like grass, and all their glory is like the flowers of the field. The grass withers and the flowers fail, but the word of the Lord endures forever. Right? So he talks them up. You guys are awesome. You're holy. You're saved by God. But you're also like a piece of grass that's going to burn in the sun. So just chill out. Love people well. Be humble. Get along. The things of God are eternal. And remember, he's speaking to a community that's going through sacrifice, that's going through persecution. And in their hearts, they're probably like, we need to fight back. We need to figure out how to take this thing over. And he's saying, hey, love well. Hold on to what you know. The things of the Lord will endure. Continuing on here, therefore you rid yourself of all malice and deceit, hypocrisy, envy, slander of every kind. Like newborn babies, crave pure spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow up in your salvation. I love this imagery of a baby, right? Desiring milk, right? And I'm not going to pretend like I have any idea of what that really means. But having young children and having them, in the middle of the night being hungry and crying out, and it's like nothing can get in the way, right? Right? Like when they're hungry, it's just like the whole world stops. And he's saying, hey, have a heart for the things of God like that. Be hungry like this infant child crying out. And what's interesting about this infant child is the infant just cries out. It doesn't go and muster up and make things happen. No, it just says, oh God, I need you. Fill me. Be a part of my life. Show me where I'm off. Show me, put up some guardrails. Give me the equipment so that I can do the things that I need to do in this world. So then by it you may grow up in your salvation, now that you have tasted that the Lord is good. We're going to end there today. But there's this idea, if you go back to that river, right? There's a river in the middle of town that's dangerous. We don't have the equipment to do this. And I would say in our lives we have places like that. And God is calling us to say, hey, do what you need to do to guard yourself from that dangerous place. Do what you need to do, right? Protect yourself in that way so that you can stand in this place. Because the next few chapters, there's some things that we're going to have to kind of wrestle through and look back and look at the cultural things. And it's going to get a little choppy for a bit, right? Because if you read it at face value, you're going to go, what is going on here? But he is setting them up to really set their gaze on the things of God. Set their gaze on the things of God, because what he's going to encourage them to do is really hard. Like really hard. Like life and death type hard stuff. Not like, oh, someone might think I'm weird. Or someone might, say something mean to me. No. He's setting them up to live in such a way that they're going to enter into this very dark moment in history, and they're not going to fight back. They're actually going to love the people that are attacking them. They're actually going to go into this place. And here's the deal. That is how historically the church has responded. The last 100 years, we kind of forgot about it, but we'll get to that later. Right? It's in times of plagues. The church, people would leave the cities. It would be the church that would stay and gather up people who were dying in the streets and bring them into their home, infecting themselves. Times of... As the scriptures were written, one of the a popular practice was this idea of abandonment, where children, especially children with any kind of deformity or disease, were taken out into the woods and abandoned, right? And what Christians would do is hide in those places, find these children, take them in. And remember, they're in poverty. They're being persecuted themselves. They take these children in and care for them. And at the same time, they have slave traders who are going, hey, stop taking these children from us, because we take them too, but we have them for a different purpose. And the church steps into that place and they love so sacrificially. So sacrificially. And this is what I think all of us have been called to in some way. We're blessed that we live in a day and age and in the space we're in, that there's a lot of freedom and there's a lot of places that haven't pushed us in. But listen, the faith, for those of you that call yourself followers of Jesus, you have in you a faith that can stand boldly in the hardest of situations. And you don't have to fight like the world. You don't have to keep creating more brokenness to fix some old brokenness. You can actually redeem yourself and redeem the world around you with love, with care, with esteeming each other and lifting each other up. It is possible. For as we read the story and we read into history, this little ragtag group that Peter's writing to, eventually changed the world. Right? The fact that I can say, do unto others as you would do unto yourself, do unto you, right? The fact that you know that is because these guys won. Right? And they affected the world culture. So when we stand together, my heart is that we would have a faith that really does change the world. It does call people and say, hey, you can participate in this thing that God is doing in the world. You yourself can step into this set-apart lifestyle where you are just so valued because God has made you and he loves you and he's redeemed you. But it's really impossible if we're using the world's ways to fight these things. So as we take communion today, one of the ways we do communion here is if you're a follower of Jesus, come and partake in this. There's a little cup with a little piece of bread and some little juice in there. But if you're just like, I don't know what's going on, this is kind of nice, but I don't know, this isn't my thing per se. Just watch what's happening in the room. Watch what's happening inside of you. For God is always working. He's always moving. So according to this section of text we're looking at today, to be holy, to be set apart, is to love others deeply. And whatever things stop us from that, we need to remove those things. Malice and envy. We need to remove those things. And I tell you, it's tricky to do. It's really easy just to say, hey, remove that. No. It takes deep work. It takes patience with the scriptures, patience with yourself, patience with the Holy Spirit, saying, God, help. Remove this. It takes honesty. One of the things as we're about to take communion, we are reminding ourselves of the broken body and the poured out blood of Christ. Recognizing this is how he fought back. Through sacrifice, through giving, through surrender. We're invited into that place. So really there's two areas that I'd love to, just for a meditation this time, a pondering, if you will. As we go through the text today, as we're talking, if there's areas in your life where you're going, I know that this is not how you're supposed to use the special plates. Right? This thing that I'm doing in my life, this is just, caught up in something. I'm my heart is just twisted up in this area, whatever it is. If that was coming up, that's probably the Holy Spirit saying, hey, I'd love to see this change so you can love better. If you have that, as you take communion in a moment here, just in your heart, you don't have to speak it out. No one needs to know. You just confess that. You say, oh Lord, I'm sorry for how I'm doing this in my own way. I'm using myself and I'm participating in ways that are just not of you. They keep me from loving well. And then for some of us here, there's a conviction, maybe as we're going through, that you see holiness as kind of clubbing people with truth. And the loving part, you're just like, that's for somebody else. Maybe you have a moral life that is set up morally well, but you're still kind of like, you got to work that with the Lord. You got to work that with the Lord, because I think by the scriptures, I got to stand on these. I think you're operating in a different way. And there's maybe a different spirit, if you will, animated, giving you life. That's only going to just bring more destruction. So what I want to do is I just want to pray, and then just take a moment of stillness, and wherever you're at, maybe none of those fit for you, that's fine. You'll take and you'll eat, you'll take and you'll drink, and then we'll open up for some prayer, and then we'll be dismissed. So Lord, we in our hands here, we hold the bread, signifying your broken body. We hold the cup, signifying your poured out blood. And we see how you showed great love. While you were being crucified, you cried out, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." For love was your primary motive. It is what set you on the path that you did to redeem us, to make us whole. So Lord, as we take and we eat, shape us and mold us. So when you're ready, take and eat and take and drink.